about the gear. If you can get in close enough to reach a cup of tea, then that would be best. Yeah, I think you can come kind of all the way this way.
Well, we have one more soul here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Everybody comfortable? I feel a little bit off-center though. Can everybody just... Thank you.
You have the best perspective.
There we go. Perfect. As August would say, there's no such thing as perfect. Can somebody who's there on Zoom say something so that we know you're there?
Hello.
Great.
Hello.
Gotcha. We can hear you. Thank you. Can you hear us well enough? For me, I guess. Let's make it us instead of me. Is that gonna work? That will not work. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a shotgun mic, but hopefully it'll still get everybody. I didn't see. I didn't have the mental bandwidth. Welcome everybody. I hope that practice was easy enough to follow, even if the form was unfamiliar. So we're going to try to compress our kind of lecture style material into the first couple few sessions. But even so, I'll be interested and open to questions and reflections along the way. I find the T plus learning as a rhythm that your mind also has, and that the pauses and shift of attention to something in the room, and then back to potentially heady material, supports both the learning and the integration of the material.
And sometimes extra robust tea.
Right, and sometimes it makes for extremely strong tea, depending on how far away I go while it's brewing. 369. 36. It has a drawer that catches the water. That, sure, thank you. Sure, it's quite ready to be refilled yet. Thank you. Appreciate it. So just like in the prayer practice pattern, in the tea pattern, begins with purification. The leaves and the vessels. The earthly branches are an expansion into the detail of our understanding of the 5 elements. And the ways that they cycle in this phenomenal world that we can observe very readily in both, and especially the day and the year, but in other vessels as well. Five elements are one way of distinguishing the whole spectrum, the full spectrum of reality. So within this reality, these things have these qualities and seem to be of a family, and so we're going to call them metal. And these things seem to be all of the same type, in spite of the diversity of their appearance, and we're going to call those wood-type phenomena. And so it's a way of categorizing so that we can organize our minds and understand our experience into these five parts, which are, there are enough parts that they provide the detail and insight that we need, and there are few enough parts that, to Zephyr's point, that we can understand essences as well as details. So the five elements are detailed distinctions among the qualities of the relationships of yin and yang. And so these two things, which we call the three because it is the yin, the yang, and the interaction of yin and yang, form all beings and experiences. Give birth to is sometimes the language we use, but it's not a creation myth, it's a relationship where the lower number, the three, or the one, are the source and seed of the more particular experiences and phenomena. So in the Lao Tzu, he writes, the Lao Tzu is the Tao Te Ching. He writes that the Tao gives birth or gives rise to the one, which gives rise to the two, which gives rise to the three, which gives rise to the 10,000 things. And so the Tao is the mystery of mysteries. As I referred to during practice, it is the unknowable that is beyond and more unknowable than that which we refer to with the word unknowable. So it is that gives birth to the one. For even to call it the one is to give it a boundary. And it's from the one that we really perceive. It's not so much that it wasn't already there, but we perceive the two, where part of it is light and bright, and part of it is low and dark, or heavy. And so that is the yang is the light and bright, and the yin is the low and heavy. And then as the light and bright and low and heavy, or day and night, begin to transform one into the other, we get the variations that we first call the five elements, and that with further distinction we call the 12 branches. So for those of you who make visual models along with the words, I'll draw a little bit up on the board. So the tea serving will be a slightly, you'll have to come and get it. I apologize. It's a little out of reach.
Up to you, or shall I do it?
This one's for you, yeah.
Thank
That's for you. Yeah.
you.
I have one. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I believe, let's see if I stay on this side of the board, one can see. So there are various ways to, it's slightly different.
Oh, there you
So there are various ways historically to diagram the relationship of the unity and wholeness to the parts that I just articulated. This is one of them. So this empty circle in some diagrams is the Tao, and in some it's the Wu Ji. Wu Ji means without limit. Ji is like the roof beam. It's the cap, the limit. And Wu is without, the same Wu as in Wu Wei, non-doing. So we use the bounded circle to symbolize that without, that which has no bounds, the boundless. And so in some diagrams you'll see the second circle, which is the one. And in some diagrams you'll see both those ideas communicated with just the one circle. But so from the Wuji or the Tao, we identify the one, which is the unity, everything as one. And then we identify division, where all things, all existing things seem to have two aspects with the broadest possible categorization. And one is that which is bright and light and rising, and that which is low and dark and falling. Water, fire would be another way to think about that. And as soon as we identify distinction, that distinction has no inherent reality, has no inherent existence, and so it transforms. And the form that it takes as it transforms is interaction. The yang penetrates the yin. The kind of sexual aspect of that is, in a way, literal. And that process creates an absence in the yang, which we symbolize this way. So this is the two and the three. The three are yin, yang, and the interaction of yin and yang. So, as a side note, for those who are familiar with I Ching symbology, you may notice that we have a pattern here: yang, yin, yang. Which is the symbol for fire or fire-like qualities. And down here we have yin, yang, yin, which is the symbol for water. Power hidden within, emptiness within. Adaptability on the outside, bright, outward moving energy on the outside here. The other way we can go from this way of articulating this distinction is simply to move directly from the division into slightly more detail. So with the I Ching symbology, the yang is the straight line and the yin is the broken line. And all aspects of the Tao have both yin and yang aspects of them. And so to get further detail about any category, we can simply add the next level of detail of yin and yang. And so each of these lines has a state of being in which the other parts of it are yin, and a state of being in which the other parts of it are yang. And same with the yin. You can see it's full yin or old yin, yin becoming yang, full yang or old yang, yang becoming yin. And in this, if we add the center here, then we have the distinction of 5 that are the 5 elements. And so that's all we need to do for this current discussion in order to establish first the, if we were studying I Ching, we would establish 2 variations on each of these with yin and yang, and that would be our 8 trigrams, which we often arrange in a circle to articulate 8 aspects of being, and then that can be further developed into the 64 hexagrams. But for now, we want to get to the 5, and then we'll use the branches to understand the details of the 5.
This is fire and water.
Yeah.
So will those be like the 2 beginning? Will those be like the 2 that give the birth to the others? Like, are they like kind of the...
They're actually the result of the birth. So, so pure yang would be a way to symbolize this, and pure yin would be a way to symbolize this, and it's their interaction, the yang coming into the yin, that becomes fire and water.
But they are like kind of like the beginning.
In a material sense, in a
Okay.
manifest sense. Yep. Yeah. With heaven and earth, Qian and Kun, which are here in the forum, we'll get to. They kind of have the feeling of both of the world, heavens, skies, earth, but also the original immaterial aspect with the same qualities. So they're both, but fire and water are of the world. Anything else in response to what we've talked about so far? So, Phil, what are the 5 elements?
Fire, water, wood, oil, earth.
Wood, yep. Yep. So wood, fire, earth, metal, water. Wood, fire, earth, metal, water. And The pattern that we'll be following here follows the what we sometimes call the cycle of generation, where one element gives birth to the next. But it gives birth, a little misleading, it's a useful simplification. But yin and yang are perpetually transforming, and this is the pattern in which they transform, become something else. So, depending on the pattern we're talking about, sometimes we'll we'll consider water the initial element, and sometimes we'll consider wood. So in the same way that in the first part of the form, we're in winter when the stillness begins to move. That could be, the stillness beginning to move could be considered the initial, or the springtime when things break open could be considered initial. In the form, we start in the winter. So the generation cycle follows the season and the cycle of the energy of the days. So water, shui, is winter and midnight, or it's more than midnight, but that's its peak. Wood is springtime and dawn and growth energy, sprout energy, new life energy. Fire is summer and noon, midday, which settles and integrates late afternoon, late summer, to the earth phase. Sorry about that mess. Earth gives birth, or transforms and becomes metal, autumn, evening, dusk, which again becomes water. These can be, depending on what you're representing, these can be symbolized with the earth as part of the cycle, but since earth, importantly, is center and integration, it's helpful to see this way as well. So the 12-part cycle that we'll trace, follows this same pattern. I won't just lean into the details quite yet, but I want you to see Zi is rat and winter solstice, and Wu is horse and summer solstice, and the equivalent in a daytime cycle. And Mao, rabbit, is equinox, spring equinox, and rooster here. YOU is the opinion.
What was the animal with the mouth?
Rabbit. And then we'll go through in more detail while we refer to the parts of the form as well.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Thanks for coming. Good to see you. Yeah, you can take that. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and close the circle and make the tea reach a little more moist as well. So how are we doing so far?
Just to be clear, you're breaking down just the understanding of the patterning, so that the patterning of how these elements break out, and then from there, sort of the interrelationship.
Yeah, so the what I want to emphasize is the way that we make these categories and vessels for the 5 elements. They are distinguishing among a continuum of our phenomenal experience. And so one of those continuums is the seasonal and day cycle. And so to me, it has been most helpful to make those associations for my own understanding. But anything will have these 5 aspects and will transform in this pattern, including a creative idea that you might have, that out of stillness emerges, sprouts, and we still don't know it, begins to know itself, then fruits and realizes itself, and then returns to see the next creation. And so that emerging out of stillness would be the rat, winter, midnight transitioning to dawn, and Mao, rabbit, springtime, and that growth cycle will have that. A relationship has that cycle. Anything happening over time has that cycle.
Does Earth have an animal?
Yeah, great question. In this breakdown, in this articulation, we are working with 4 different Earths with different animals. So each of the other 4 elements finishes its cycle with an Earth integration phase of the changes that just occurred. And each of those 4 phases has its own animal. So in the springtime, it's dragon. In the summer, it's goat. In the fall, it's monkey. And in the winter, it's ox. So on your chart here, I've tried to indicate these kinds of things in a color pattern as well to make it legible and give you a feel for it. So the Earth phases are the yang phase of each color, each element is a full color. The yin phase is a kind of a 50% transparency, and the integration phase, the earth phase, is 75% transparency, which is just a way of saying there's the height, the valley, and the in-between, and the earth phase is the in-between. The integration of the peak and valley of that growth and diminishment of each element energy. So let's look at first the whole pattern very briefly, and then come back and expand on the first few. So the form, and so in this case, our approach begins with Zi rat, yang water. And again, this is midnight and winter solstice. And so don't get pulled too deep into other parts of the chart yet. Let's just think about the element and the color and the changes as if in a day or a season. Maybe I will introduce what's happening here in the season column. That's a 4-week month. These dates shift a little bit each year by a day or two. And then the two phrases below the dates are 2-week seasons, and they have a name. And happily, in where we live now, has the same seasonal feeling, similar latitude to those who came up with the system. And so we don't have to extrapolate what major snow might be in the Southwest or in Central America or something. We know what major snow is, and it does indeed, the feeling of that energy does indeed coincide with December 7th to December 21st. And then winter solstice, so you see some slightly poetic, helpful orientations on the passing of season there. So we begin with Zi rat, yang water, and yang and yin always it always goes from yang to yin to yang to yin. So from yang water, we go to yin earth, the earth of the water phase, and that's Cho, ox. And the month that is associated is loosely January, more precisely January 6th to February 4th. From minor cold to major cold. You know that feeling in your body where the cold really deepens in late January. To yin tiger. Yin is the name, it's not yin or yang. And this is a yang wood. The previous phase, Cho ox, was yin earth. The next phase is yang. It's the beginning of spring, it's yang wood. These days, it has been different over the millennia, but these days, we, in the Chinese tradition, the Taoist tradition, we consider the beginning of the year to be February 4th, the beginning of spring. And so when you are looking at the energy of a year, whether it's for astrological charts or for understanding weather or making predictions in any way, the branch animal that, or the pair of earthly branch and heavenly stem that identifies the year, that energy starts and finishes on February 4th, give or take a day or two. So the initial energy of spring is strong, kind of bursting forth. It's thunder and sprouts breaking through the earth, or perhaps breaking out of the seed. And then the growth period, the next phase of the growth period, the springtime period, is yin wood. It's more gentle, or its strength is internal. The sap is running, that yang line in the center of a flexible plant sprout, strong current of sap and vitality course through. So from yin wood, we move to the earth phase of the spring season, of the wood season. It is yang earth, and it is chun dragon. So this is a phase of integration of the new growth. In the season, it's April 5th to May 6th approximately, so April-ish. And the two-week seasons are pure brightness and grain rain. Grain rain, you can hear, of course, the agricultural reference and the relationship to the rain coming and supporting the growth of the grain. So that's late spring, and it transitions to early summer with yin fire, su snake, yin fire, and that's May, give or take. And then the fullness of summer encompasses the solstice, and it is Wu, horse, Yang, fire. The integration of the growth, which you can think of very tangibly as the ripening of the fruit, or even the fruit returning to earth, is the earth phase way goat, yin earth. That's July, give or take. July 7th to August 8th, plus or minus a day. The heat also, like in the day, you can feel it most easily maybe, where though the sun has peaked and begun its descent, the heat of the day is accumulating still in 1 to 3 p.m. And that's the same as July. So that part of the day, though the energy is descending, that's the hottest part. Out of that earth transforms into Shen monkey, which is yang metal. This is the beginning of the return to the root. In the literal way, we can see and feel the sap returning. To the root.
And it is today, September 8th, so we're on that transition.
That's right. Now, fall begins in August, which these adjusting to seeing things in this way, I know can feel a little silly almost sometimes. But for me, when I see the clarity of the pattern, because the culmination of the energies align with the equinoxes and solstices, that feels much more kind of intuitively right. So I enjoy following this idea of season with my mind, my experience, rather than imagining that the summer starts at summer solstice. So this yang metal, Shen monkey, transforms into yin metal, Yu rooster. And that's this month we're entering, which will include the autumn equinox. And that cycle of yang and yin integrates during Shu Dog, which is the yang earth phase, the earth phase of the metal season. And the winter begins gently. Yin water, high pig, H-A-I, high pig. In the day, 9 to 11 p.m. In the season, November. For a bunch of years there, it was the first snow was actually on November 6th or 7th or 8th. It hasn't been that way the last few years, but you can see the synchronization there. To finish this brief overview, look all the way to the right at the hexagram. This is a particular pattern called the tidal pattern or the sovereign pattern. And it is, hexagram, hex is 6, grams pattern in Chinese the word is gua, which simply means pattern, but when we refer to pattern, this is what we refer to. So the trigram is also, the 3-line pattern is also referred to as gua. Given the way we've articulated these 12 months, how would you articulate this pattern of 5 yin with 1 yang at the bottom? Zephyr, want to have a go at it?
You're talking about this first one?
Yeah.
So it's, the base of it is, it's grounded in winter still. So, I mean, what do you mean? How do you want? You're saying, how do I articulate this actual gua?
Yeah. So, what does that pattern feel like? If we know that the pattern or the movement of the development of 6 lines, I'll add this part to help shape, is from the bottom to the top. And so I'll also lead you in a little bit by saying, if the previous pattern was entirely yin, 6 yin lines,
right,
and this pattern is now 1 yang at the bottom, what is that? How does that help you understand winter solstice?
So that's a leading into spring and into moving the other direction. Or as you said, it's like the beginning of yin and yin entering yang, or yang entering yin.
Yep, that's right.
So it's almost like
So-
the sprout is forming,
Right.
beginnings of the sprout.
So we can see it as the seed, we can see it as the sprout breaking out of the seed, we can see it as the beginning of growth, but it is a transition from stillness to an almost imperceptible movement at the center and low aspect of that stillness. In one poem it says, "From the fathomless depths a response is felt." This return of movement is sometimes talked about as a response. And the fathomless depths, this is like the a body of water that is so deep it has no bottom, like the Tao. The beginning, the initial movement has stirred all the way at the bottom. And so it's nearly imperceptible, and yet the previous year has now culminated, and we're beginning the movement into the next year, or day, or transformational cycle within ourselves.
What came to me was creative inspiration from a place of deep retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be in my the way I would kind of detail that, because that could be any of the first 5 months in a way. Well, the beginning is the beginning, but so the feeling of that is like this initial movement that is still very much unnameable, and even for those of us who are experienced in creative endeavors, it may still be slightly imperceptible. It's very subtle at the beginning, but it is that beginning. And creativity, creation, these all, we can use the one that's at the tip of our mind to get the feel for the shape. We also want to always know that it's articulating all cycles of creation and creativity.
I get two images that I don't know if they're good to work with, but one of the tide coming in and going out as I look at the transitions
Yep.
of the form, and another one is of fire over a cauldron
Uh-huh.
and coming to a boil and then coming down again after fire stricken.
Yep, those are both useful progressions.
I appreciate the words used, flexible, optimistic.
Yeah, those.
You're deep in winter, and having the optimism to feel that beginning stir,
Yep.
and then in full winter, knowing and joyful and coming out of the cycle, and still knowing you were in it. You have to be brave to be in that deep zone. I appreciate these little cues.
Yeah, we'll get more into the kind of qualities of each one. Actually, we can do that now. So both what Zephyr said and Phil said are accurate. Also, the initial idea, the creativity, initiating, is accurate. So the feeling here, so you see from 6 yin lines, we have 1 yang line initially, and then 2, so it's 4 yin and 2 yang at the bottom. You see this yang growth, brightness, fullness, growth, traveling up, transforming the yin into yang, until it culminates with snake at the beginning of summer, and just like the solstice, the winter solstice had a single a single yang, the summer solstice has a single yin, and so the culmination of yang initiates the yin cycle, the growth of yin, and the culmination of yin initiates the growth of yang. And then you'll notice in that pattern how the yin then grows until it's pure yin at the bottom, all broken lines, 6 broken lines. Earth, stability, openness, receptiveness, and the cycle begins again. So in our form, in our structured practice, we cycle these 12 parts in order to bring our bodies and minds, our energetic bodies, our organ systems, through this cycle of growth and transformation and return. On the one hand, to harmonize with the natural cycles, harmonize with the cycles that appear to be happening outside of us, and when our inside and outside are in harmony, then everything moves smoothly and with the least amount of suffering that is available given the circumstance. But the other thing that's happening is that this pattern is also the alchemical pattern, which refers to stages of development from what is where we are now to full realization. And wherever we are on that spectrum, this cycle is a cycle of return and refinement that moves us along that pattern, where fruit is fruition and return is returning to the material world. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, how the form traces that pattern.
Going back to the different gua, is there a time when it's stable? Like when it's all, for instance, during summer when all 6, it's all yang or all yin? Are these stable moments? Are these moments where, I mean, it's always moving, but
it's always moving, but
They
we do use those sometimes to symbolize constancy in either clarity, the yang, or stillness, the yin.
okay, so this will be
so
used.
we use them abstractly
Right.
with that orientation.
Right.
But the feeling of a pause is really just the subtlety of the initiation of the next phase
In the context of this.
of a cycle.
Of this cycle.
A cycling pattern. Yeah. But sometimes we use Qian and Kun. Qian is pure yang and Kun is pure yin, to refer to the abstract or the Platonic ideal of the 2 parts. So the first part of the form is called Yang rises from the ocean of origin, or the source sea. So it's kind of literally articulating the yang within the yin and the initiation of this cycle. So you'll recall the first part of the form is holding the pure yang mudra, pinky tips together, middle finger tips together, thumb tips together, holding as if you're holding a sphere held at your lower belly. I didn't get to it today, but you also visualize your hands holding the golden red sun of your dantian within your body. So it's around the energy field of your dantian. It's pure yang because we have the pinky is considered the first, the middle finger's considered the third, the thumb is considered the fifth. These are odd numbers. Odd numbers are yang. And the addition of all of the odd numbers equals 9, which is also a symbol of pure yang. And so this is the pure yang mudra. You'll also potentially notice, depending on your familiarity with the trigrams, that there is this connected line with the middle and pinky, and the broken line with the ring fingers makes the trigram of fire, and the upper, including a hidden line, is open, closed, so yin, yang, and then an absent line, which is yin. So that's fire underwater, which is the mechanism of transformation. So we're bringing heat to our bodies, and in a literal sense, in our lower belly, in a more abstract sense, we're bringing the fire of our attention and our awareness within being yin, and the body being fundamentally yin as a whole, where earthly manifest existence is all yin, and attention and awareness, constancy, brightness is all yang. And so we're bringing the awareness inside the body. We're bringing the fire underneath the water to transform water into steam and commence the cycle of transformation that arrives at fruition. So those are some of the things happening in that mudra and in this context. Yang rising from the sea. The chi hai is the ocean of sea in the lower belly. It also has a kind of, in a sense, literal energetic body symbology there as well. So you'll remember the mantra there is Hung, and it's we close the mouth to say it, and we feel the pressure in our lower belly, the kind of thunder reverberation sounds like, and you feel that kind of compression there as you say it, and that stimulates the body and the energetic body to condense and begin to move the energy there. From my perspective, we are participating and harmonizing in a cycle that's occurring already, but it supports our understanding of the cycle, and it supports the efficacy of the cycling. If we're oriented with sincerity at living simply and being a good person, at spiritual development, then the alchemy is happening. However, this can speed it up, integrate it into your phenomenal experience of your body and emotion and mind. It can support and make you aware of the process that's happening. And also reinforce that tether, because actually it's that orientation. It's difficult. In a way, one of the main difficulties of the spiritual path is to maintain focus and that orientation. And so the practice of the form supports that continuity. So I think we did 9 breaths of the Hong. That's a good number to do. 3 is okay. Depending on your experience with energetic practice, or this form in particular, you're looking to feel the heat to initiate the cycle. And you may not need to do it at all, or you might need to do it 3 times, or you might need to do it 9 times. 9 times is good to begin with. And so the breathing pattern, again from the practice, is inhale and hold, and it's an open hold, so you're not locking off your glottis. And if you're comfortable with the dynamics that are happening there, you can begin to compress between the diaphragm and the perineum. And if you do that, you'll need to open again. You're not closed here, but if you're closed here, you'll need to open again before you hum, before you sound the mantra. So inhale, hold, hum, inhale, hold, hum, and then rest in the heat for a little bit for this first part. Any questions on that? So we're initiating, or we're participating in the initiation of a new cycle.
I don't want to derail where you're intending to go. Could you just quickly say what the trigram relates to in the chart? I mean, is there a direct relation between the column of Gua next to the hidden stems and another column in the chart?
Well, the hidden stems are something else. But the trigram, the 3-line pattern, is one of 8. There are 8 possible, as from previous diagram, or if you already know the Bagua, 8 Gua, 8 pattern. The 8 pattern divides the phenomena of experience into 8 categories instead of 12. And so when we arrange them in a circle, they also have a seasonal pattern and a clock pattern. But since there are 8 divisions instead of 12, the alignment is not perfect with the 12. And so some of those are repeated. But otherwise, water in winter, thunder in springtime. So it's the postnatal pattern.
Yeah.
It's the post coming into being.
Oh, I see. It's because they're repeated in a few places from one phase to another.
So it's mapping the 8-part pattern to the 12-part pattern. And the Bagua arranged in a circle in the post-celestial pattern. Fire at the top and water at the bottom.
I do remember that. I just was trying to relate it to the 12 part.
Yeah. can look a little confusing because of the repeated symbols, but
And I see that there's 12 here. And
Yeah.
what is, when you're talking about the 8 part, what is being removed? Is it the?
well, it isn't so much removed as if you divide the same spectrum, but we call it a circle because it transforms and begins again. So if you divide it into 8, it's not 8. Anyway, if you divide the circle into 8 parts, the categories include, these kinds of phenomena: this color, direction, time. But if you just divide that same one into 12, they don't line up perfectly, but they have some overlap. Does that answer what you were aiming at?
I don't think I understood your answer, but I came to my own answer right when I asked the question, but my answer might be incorrect, and then I got confused. I was just thinking the yin and yang are with each of the elements, and then earth is being left out, which is the transitory. I don't know. I didn't quite grasp it.
So, let's see. So the 8 trigrams would be arranged in a cyclical pattern, in a circle that moves like a clock, and would also be winter to summer to winter. And so that circle is divided into 8 parts. When we're using the trigrams to express that pattern, there are 8 divisions. But when we're using the 12 branches to express that pattern, it's the same pattern. We're just using a different set of distinctions and articulations. Then these 8 are instead 12, and I won't be able to map it accurately. But these lines don't line up precisely, but there's overlap because they articulate the same cycle. I don't know if I did any better that time.
Are the 12 sort of demarcations, distinctions, they're related, of course, to the 8 as well?
They're related, and they have correlations here, but they don't map
Sure.
precisely to the same distinctions, because it's out of 360 how many degrees. It's a bigger section with the 8 and a smaller section with the 12.
And the 12 is just a further difference to use the 12 as opposed to the 8? Is it a different sort of detail?
It's a little more detail, and it follows the sun and moon orientation. So they're 1 month periods in a year, or in the daytime we talk about double hours, and so there's 12 double hours in a 24-hour day, which have that energetic division as well.
Yes, the heavenly stones were associated with the lunar cycle and the mansion, was
No.
it? No. I think I have an association that the 10 and the 12 is breaking the year or unit into solar or lunar. divisions?
It's not.
Oh.
So the month patterns are the lunar pattern. It's articulating the growth of the sun energy, the yang and the yin of the full year, but they're divided into lunar parts, even though 1 month parts, even though they don't follow the lunar year. Nor do the stems. The stems follow planetary arrangements.
It's not really completely analogous, but I mean, if you just thought about like Fahrenheit and centigrade as two different ways of describing the same phenomenon, and so you might come up with different numbers, but you're still describing the same phenomenon. It's sort of scaled differently.
So you're talking about the trigram and the 8 and the 12?
Yeah, just the idea of the 12 versus an 8
Yeah.
division cycle.
Yeah.
That helps me, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not to pick too close apart, but the thing to keep in mind is that whereas in a centigrade to Fahrenheit conversion, there is 1 degree that is that
Right.
other degree.
Right. It's not.
In the 12, the divisions don't line up precisely. So
It's a shitty analogy.
Doesn't work, Phil.
The idea was you could reference the same stuff two different ways.
yeah.
And they don't quite line up.
So our time is essentially up here. I think we could cover a good amount of ground with the foundation and then overview and then addressing in detail the first part. The next couple sessions will go more quickly with a focus on the details of each of the 12 branches. And hopefully this discussion was succinct enough to warrant repeating if you want to set the ground again, if you want to set the context of the coming into being, the distinction into, or the growth into distinction at more and more subtle and detailed levels. And then kind of arriving at what we're articulating and experiencing here in the form.
What did you call the gua again? You had another name for...
Sometimes known as the tidal
The
gua,
tidal.
which follows the intuitive analogy that Phil was articulating, or also the sovereign
The sovereign, that was what
gua.
you said.
Okay. So good. So thank you. That first round of tea was no good. Thanks for drinking it. I'm not sure what I was. I wasn't tasting. I was just serving. And I think these are past. Just not
It was-
as flavorful as.
It made the next one very exciting.
Yeah.
All of a
So
sudden, I
that's-
wasn't paying
that's what I was
attention.
hoping.
Oh, chocolate.
So good. So thank you. I hope the online. It looks like there isn't anybody left there. I hope it continued to work for everybody all the way through.
The video was good, but the sound was pretty bad. Because I was on.
Oh, were you on?
Oh.
Yeah, I got up this morning and I felt like I was walking on a boat on a rough sea. I don't know what was going on, and I feel better now, but I didn't know if I.
Didn't get here quite. Yeah.
It was pretty rocky.
Yeah.
So I was on for the practice. And,
Cool.
It is, at least from my reception, it was very muffled, a lot of it.
Oh.
And so you catch phrases, and some of the time I was reading along with you, and that helped, or I'm familiar enough with it, but
Yeah.
I think it's a problem.
Was that before
Well,
you
that's
brought
good
that
to know.
over?
Probably not. Probably I need to get that closer, turn up the gain or something.
Yeah. And sometimes it just like got this, whatever.
Garbled.
Happens with sound waves.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, it wasn't even difficult to hear you, it was just nonsense kind of noise.
Huh.
So it could be pretty frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, leading up to it, okay. Press pause here.